Tonight we're going to talk about my big toe. Well, now that I've got your attention, it's not my big toe, it's My Big Toe, written by nuclear physicist in the language of contemporary Western culture, unifying science and philosophy, physics, metaphysics, mind and matter, purpose and meaning, and the normal and the paranormal, the entirety of human experience, including both our objective and subjective worlds, are brought together under one seamless scientific understanding. And who will decipher all this for us? Tom Campbell in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Tom Campbell began researching altered states of consciousness at Monroe Laboratories in the early 1970s. We'll talk a lot about that tonight. He experiments with and explores subjective and objective minds. For the past 30 years or so, Tom's been focusing on scientifically exploring properties, boundaries, abilities of consciousness. He is a scientist, he is a physicist, and for the past 20 years has been at the heart of developing U.S. missile defense systems as well. Our special guest tonight on Coast to Coast, Tom Campbell. Hey, Tom, welcome to the program.
Hi, George. Glad to be here.
And likewise. Now, My Big Toe, when I first saw that, I said, what the heck is he writing about? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. My Big Toe. The toe in My Big Toe is a capital T, capital O, capital E. It's an acronym for Theory of Everything. It's a physics term that I guess most physicists are aware of,
and soon we all will be.
Yeah, it means an overarching theory. A theory, physicists, starting with Einstein and his unified field theory, tried to come up with a toe, a theory of everything, that explained all of physics. So it explained quantum mechanics and relativity and classical mechanics and all of the various branches of physics, all explained by just one, set of equations, one understanding of how reality worked. Well, that's a toe in physics speak. Now, mine's a big toe. And the difference between a toe and a big toe is that a big toe has to also explain the paranormal as well as the normal. It has to explain the physical as well as the non-physical. It has to explain the subjective as well as the objective. So a big toe needs to explain everything, basically, that's in your experience.
And you believe that, though, the worlds between the physics and metaphysics are very important, don't you?
Absolutely. Physics is a very narrow concept. It deals with only that tiny slice of reality that we call physical. Our reality is a much larger thing than that.
Tell me a little bit about your work at the Monroe Laboratories. Bob Monroe, I think one of the greatest astral projectors in his institute now, still just doing what it does well. But how did you get involved in that?
Well, I was a young physicist, just newly out of graduate school, had my first job. The fellow I worked for tossed this book at me, and it was Journeys Out of the Body. And he said, "Here, read this." Well, he was the boss, so I did what he said, and I read it. Next question was, well, what do you think? And I said, well, if this is true, that's really amazing. That's fantastic. If it's not true, it's just some guy hustling books, then, that's another story. But how do you ever find out? How do you know what's true and what's not true? About 3 or 4 months later, my boss comes to me and says, how would you like to go visit this guy? As it turns out, I was working in Charlottesville, Virginia for Army Technical Intelligence at the time. And
okay.
Bob's house and his lab were just at Crozet at that time, a place called Whistlefield Farms. That's not where he's located now, but that's where he was then. And he was in the process of trying to study the out-of-body phenomena. He had this thing just happen to him. Nothing he tried to learn to do. It just happened. At first he thought maybe he was going nuts, that it was a psychological trick. He studied that issue, got with Charlie Tart and some others, and decided that, no, he was perfectly sane. These things were just happening. And then he just started to collect evidence where he would go places and do things and interact, and realized that there was information he was collecting that was outside of himself. It wasn't just tricks of his imagination. And then he wanted to study it. Well, what is it? Where are these places? What is this reality? How do what does it mean? Or one might say 2 different dimensions. That would be another way of saying that. They are both natural to consciousness. So the physical is one reference frame. The non-physical, well, the out-of-body state in particular, is a different reference frame. And there's a lot of others. It's not just those 2. But there's a multitude of these various reference frames, these various dimensions, and your consciousness can reach, can operate in, can experience any of them. So
well, Bob,
that's how they're different. Now, how they're same is that obviously the non-physical, the out-of-body, is an experience place, and that experience affects you. It's part of your experience, so it's part of your growth, your awareness, and it's connected to you. You're all one thing, so you kind of are the one thing that cement them all together.
did you come away from astral projection believing that the astral body might be the soul or the spirit?
Well, I didn't know. As a physicist, those were things that I wasn't sure of, and I had to investigate. What physicists do is model reality. That's what we're all about. How does it work? Fundamentally, how does it work? So that's what I did. I started doing research and experiments until I could decide questions like that. How does it work? What is consciousness? What is this out-of-body state? How does it relate to other paranormal experiences? How does it relate to precognitive dreams? What's it all about? And that's basically this theory of everything I have. This theory is not a theory that's what Tom Campbell believes about consciousness or out of body. It's a theory. It's a scientific, logical explanation that basically fits everything, and it will answer those kinds of questions and tell you, yes, soul is, the out-of-body state is not just your soul. It's not that simplistic. The out-of-body state is an experience state, and your soul, your consciousness, shall we say, your non-physical part, is much bigger and broader than that. You're a multiple-dimensional being, and the out-of-body reality is just one experience space that you can explore. There are others.
Through these altered states, did you ever come up with your own thoughts on what possibly came first? And that was, did we have a universe of consciousness before anything really formed, or did we have this physical plane and then consciousness came into it?
Oh, it's the former, and all of these kinds of ideas, I guess, are I kind of deal with in that book. But you start with consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental. This physical reality is a virtual reality. Is probably the best way to say it. Physical reality is a reality of perception. Think of a virtual reality where you put on goggles, stand on a platform that wobbles, have inputs to you, and it creates a reality. You are awareness. You have input, and what you see, this virtual reality, is just because of is just the data that you're getting through your sensory organs. Well, it's sort of like that with consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental, and you have these sensory inputs that come in that create this virtual physical reality. So, yes, the physical follows the non-physical. The non-physical is primary. The physical is just a perception-based reality. Again, another experience-based that has its own function and its own physics, its own rule set.
Tom, once a person can understand this and understand its meaning, its significance, and how to use it, what does it do for that person?
It would be like, what if a person never left their home, or then one day they got up and they traveled outside to the outside world and they realized there was a whole world out there outside their house, a whole planet, maybe a whole solar system and a whole universe. It lets you experience, travel, and understand the larger reality. You're a citizen. You're a member of a much bigger reality frame than just this physical frame. And to stay locked up in this house, this physical house, is like you're only experiencing just a little piece of what there is to experience. What does it do for you? Well, it makes you grow up. You understand, the world. You understand reality from a much bigger picture. Then suddenly all kinds of things make sense. Things that in this